This is a solution for Jacob's Chapter 2. This is the objective question number 16. We're going to do a couple of problems here that talk about productivity. So, productivity, you're familiar with it already. You have a working knowledge of it. Now you have to tie it into more of a formal structure of analysis. So we all do this. Productivity is really a measurement of the return of something. You have a resource, you have labor, you have parts, you might have time, just on time, how fast somebody gets something done or how well the company's doing with time. And what you really want to do is you're looking at an output over all the inputs that go into it or some form of inputs. And so you can look at the total productivity by taking a look at all the inputs, but then you might want to narrow it down and find out, let's say that you own 2 or 3 factories, and you want to compare and see how they develop some kind of practice, some kind of method around using one of the resources, and they're very efficient, and you might want to figure out what that is, and then share it as a best practice with the other factories so they can reduce costs. So basically that means more money in your pocket if you own the business, to make it clear. Okay, so productivity is equal to an output over inputs or input, an input. So it's some or all of the inputs. Okay, so that's basically what we're going after here. We want to be able to measure how well the company is making use of a resource. Basically, that's what we're taking a look at. You can monitor that over time. You can see when your averages start ranging higher, ranging lower, and you can do something about it. So Chapter 2, Problem 16, this Live Trap Corporation received the data below for its rodent cage production unit. Find the total productivity. That's the entire question. Okay. So what we look at is, okay, so they produce 50,000 cages, and let's assume this is per year. They don't really say. Okay, so 50,000 cages per year, and they tell us that the sales price is $3.50. If we wanted to know what the sales or revenue number is, you just multiply 50 by 3.5, or $3.50, and you're going to end up with how much money you're making, and that's, I think, $175,000 if I did that well in my head. But we're looking at what the inputs were. What did it take to produce these 50,000 cages? Okay, so we can take a look at all these. But there's 4 here. There's some labor hours involved. They tell us what the average wages are for that, $7.50 an hour. They talk about the raw materials costs, $30,000, and then component parts that go in besides the raw materials is $15,350. Okay. Now, one thing about the productivity is watch your units. Productivity can be mentioned a number of different ways. You can say, how many dollars did it take to make dollars? Okay, so if you talk about your output, could be the sales for your year. That's the output. The output is you got $175,000 out of this operation here, and you want to compare it to what inputs it took, and they're asking for what was the total. Add up all these numbers here and find out, with all the costs involved of all these resources, what the productivity is. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to move this out of the way. That's the question straight out of the chapter. I just screen grabbed that. So I set this Excel sheet up, and I recommend that you use Excel for this because it really speed things along there. Okay. Okay, so I recreated this table over here. Here's your 50,000 cages, $3.50 per trap. I'll be clear with that and put in the dollar sign. Okay, so that's what we're talking about there. So the first thing you want to do is your output. What you could do is you can take a look at what inputs it took to make so many cages here. But as you start looking through your numbers, as you start looking through the numbers that you have here, you have some things that are in labor hours, and we have a per hour, and then we have dollars down here. So it looks like what we're going to want to do is convert our labor hours into labor dollars, meaning that we know that it's 620 labor hours times $8 an hour. That's going to be the cost of the labor that went into these things. Okay, so over here I am going to recreate the column here, and I'm going to put a header on here so you understand what we're talking about. Okay, so this is going to be all costs in dollars. Okay, so these will come right over because they already are in dollars, whereas what we need to do is multiply. We want to find out our labor cost here. So our labor cost is going to be equal to this cell times this cell. And now we have how many dollars it costs in labor that contributed to these 50,000 cages at $3.50 per trap. Okay, so what we're going to do also here is I want to widen this a little bit, give ourselves a little breathing room here. Widen this a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to put in here, this is cage output. Okay, these are the cage outputs, but we're going to put it in dollars, so it's going to be cage output in dollars. We're trying to get everything into one kind of unit here, so let's use dollars. Okay, so this is going to be equal to 50,000 times $3.50 per cage trap. Okay. So it was $175,000. I'm just going to format that really quickly and put a dollar sign in front of there. Okay, so that's what our output was, and these are going to be. We want to do the sum of all these inputs here to make the calculation. So we're going to put in a sum function here of these numbers. So the total input was $50,000. Okay, so if we're looking for productivity, what is that going to equal? That was going to be outputs, going to be equals to this over your input, which is this. So our productivity over all the inputs would be 3.5. Okay, so that has no units because we had dollars over dollars. The units cancel out. We divided 175,000 over $50,000. So it's a multiple. The productivity is a factor or a multiple. And as we talked about in class, there's some common ones used in accounting. You've probably learned about ROI, which is return on investment. So that says dollars in would be your inputs, and what was your output. So if you consider all these your investments, then that would be, the productivity would be 3.5. That means it made 3.5 times as much money on what you put into it. That's what we're looking at, productivity, ROI. The other part is ROA. Okay, and one of the reasons here is you don't want to put a lot of money into assets necessarily. You want to keep your assets low, and that way you get to keep more money in your pocket. So these are productivity expressions that you've certainly seen before, but in industry, you also want to keep track of the usage of a lot of the raw materials. I'll leave it at that. That's the solution for this, and I hope that helps.